Hi, this is Joe Rabil. Wanted to discuss going a little deeper into the analysis of the zero line on MACD. This is a critical line. I use the standard version of MACD from Gerald Appel's original work, the 12-26-9 version, using exponential moving averages. I found it to be very, very helpful. I never felt the need to try and change. I've seen other versions of the MACD out there, and I don't have a problem with changing that. But the original version just seems to provide some very good signals. So this video is on the zero line reversal. And I'm just going to highlight here on the chart. This is the zero line. So I've got the zero over on the right here. You can see that. But this level is a very critical level. It's the area where I think a lot of very, very good trades will develop if you're watching. So you need to know where that level is. You need to know what the stock is doing around that level. I've just found a lot of the best trades will develop in that area. So I wanted to make sure I brought that up to you. But there are some critical things to look for when you're at this area. And I'm going to try and show you a couple examples just using this one chart. This is AMT, which is American Tower Corp, the daily chart. And I'm going to just start here on this first. I'll just highlight it with this line here. This is the first time in this move where the MACD lines go through a corrective process and work their way back down to the 0 point. And I think the thing I want to point out is if you were to compare and look at the velocity of the correction, and then look at, so here's the second time you came down to the zero line, but look at the velocity of this drop. And then let's look at the third time you came down and even got a little bit below the zero line on this drop. And then the fourth time where you had an incredibly violent decline on this drop. So I think what you're looking for are periods where the red line is going to be below the blue line, meaning the actual MACD line is going to be below its signal line, but it's coming down to the 0 point. What I've noticed is if you get to the zero line and you are forming this is really a counter trend pullback because the weekly chart is still in a very strong trend. I'm not going to pull up the weekly right now, but the whole idea here is you've had a really good run to the upside, and now you're working your way back down, and the 18 is working its way back down to the 40. And if I see a zero line pullback, the first thing I'm going to do with price is draw a trend line in. And once I have that trend line, if MACD turns right at the zero line, it doesn't penetrate it to the downside, and you don't have a real violent sell-off coming into the zero line, I'm going to want to draw the trend line in. And if I break that trend line, I want to get in. That is going to be my signal to be looking to be a buyer. I'm not going to wait for any more confirmation there because I know I've got a lot of strength in this trend still because it's holding this zero level. If I go to the second instance where you came down, and this was kind of a steep drop, I don't really want to draw a trend line on this price action here. And my reasoning is the one way to check yourself on your trend lines is if the 18 MA has a completely different slope than your trend line. So if I go back to this one, look at the slope of this trend line of this 18 MA, and look at the slope of the trend line. They're not that significantly different. They're about moving at about the same pace, especially right at the end. They're parallel. Whereas if I were to draw this trend line in, I'm just going to move this over. If I were to draw that as a trend line, look at the difference between the slope of the trend line here and the 18 MA. That's when I know I'm probably a little off base. It's too short of a time move relative to the 18. It's just not giving you I don't think it's giving you the true trend of this time frame. So I would not be inclined to think that I want to draw a trend line here. And as it turns out, what ends up happening when you get a violent decline, many cases, you're going to work your way back up and test resistance and then come back down and test the low. It works instead of doing a low and then a lower high and then a lower low. In a lot of cases, instead of doing the ABC down, you will come down, rally up, and make a higher low here. Now, if I see that and these lines are in the general area of the 0 level, I'm probably willing to draw a trend line in place. A safer way to play it might be to just draw a horizontal line here and say, you know what, if I can take out this prior peak and I know the MACD lines are in the general area and holding the 0 line and look like they're turning up, I think I'd be willing to buy this, taking out this prior peak as a new move. If we go back to the last move, this last drop, this was so violent to the downside. Look at all the big red bars and the size of them, and look at again the velocity. If I were to draw, I can't draw a trend line, but because again, the slope is so much different than the MACD is. The other thing that's concerning me here is, since I use multiple time frames, I'm going to switch this and I want to show you what is actually taking place. Let me actually highlight this time frame at this peak, and let's go to the weekly chart. And there is the circle from this, from the daily chart that is now transposed onto my weekly. And notice what happened. So if I make a new high on this peak in price, and MACD makes a new high, and then you get a really nice little pinch play, and then it makes another new high, and then you get actually another pinch play. But every single time price goes up here, you're making a new high in MACD. And then you pulled back and you made another new high in MACD. Then you pulled back and you made another move to the upside. And this time MACD makes a lower high. If you notice, it did not make a new high on this move. So is this pullback, this big red bar, is the same action as this bar? I now know that I've made a peak without momentum confirmation on the weekly chart. This is going to trouble me. I mean, I'm really less interested in playing any kind of a 0 line reversal here because I know the trend is getting late on the higher time frame. So in this instance, I'm probably going to wait and see, how does this react around the 0 line, and does it break through, or does it regain enough strength to really give itself a reversal back to the upside? As it turns out, you had the violent move to the downside. You rallied up. You tried to make a higher low. You know, it tried to work its way back higher. I mean, it's possible you might have been caught into this move at 230. But again, I like to put a little bit more distance between where I'm buying and the violent price action. When it's this close, I mean, that to me is just a little too, I don't want to be buying something when I've got this big, huge area here as resistance. That would bother me. I don't really want to be buying making a new buy entry when price is this close and no one's really had an opportunity to get out because of how violent the decline was. So as it turns out, what ended up happening is it had the violent move down, and this time you actually broke the 0 line to the downside, really for the first time in this whole time period over the last year or so. And then what you had was your first pinch play to the downside, where this showed a little bit of hesitation and this was still strong down, and you got your 1, 2, 3 bars up, higher lows, and then you gave your pinch play down. So the point I'm trying to make here is you want to keep a real close eye at this 0 level. A lot of times you'll get these reversals that happen very quickly. Other times they're a little bit more complex. And then in other instances, you'll reverse the trend, and you want to be making sure you're ready to play the next signal. The pinch plays that happen right around the 0 line, either to the upside or the downside of a new cross, are usually very, very powerful. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the 0 line action and the 0 line reversals. Post any questions you might have on any of the videos that I do. Please subscribe at the bottom, and we'll talk to you soon.